welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here in the room today and also online for this Highlands and Islands Enterprise Access to Oil and Gas live streaming event. I'm Julia Sutherland and we are broadcasting live from the Culloden Suite in the Drumossie Hotel in Inverness. Now, oil and gas related activity has long been a contributor to the economy of the Highlands and Islands and accounts for 13% of the total Scottish GDP. Businesses and institutions based in the Highlands and Islands have a long and successful track record in the sector that extends over 40 years. Up to 24 billion barrels of oil and gas reserves for business. Identify appropriate points in the supply chain where you could pitch your product or service or your know-how. Identify potential routes into the oil and gas sector for new entrants, and identify appropriate sources of information. But ultimately, what we're looking to do is to encourage more businesses into the oil and gas sector. So we've got 5 very well-informed speakers here today who are going to help us to do that. We've got Abigail Clark, Steve Chisholm, Craig Thompson, Mark MacKintosh, and Gavin Mackay. And what we'll do is we'll have 3 speakers, we'll have a little bit of a break for some tea and coffee. You can do that as well if you're watching at home. And then we'll have another couple of speakers and a dedicated Q&A session at the end. But if you've got any questions after each of our speakers, then if you just stick your hand up, I'll come over with the microphone and you can feel free to ask those then. And if you're also watching this webinar, you can email any questions into us. The address is on the screen, but that is energy@hient.co.uk, hient.co.uk. So please, if you've got any questions, feel free to send those in to us and we'll ask them on your behalf. So time to start with our first speaker. Abigail Clark is a senior business analyst for Economics Oil and Gas UK, and she's going to look at the sort of scale of the opportunity, focusing on UKCS, breaking down the spend and activity by subsectors and let's just welcome her onto the stage, please. Put your hands together for Abigail Clark.
Good morning, everyone. As already mentioned, my name's Abigail Clark. I'm one of the analysts at Oil and Gas UK. I've been with the organisation about 2 years now, working predominantly within the strategic priorities. The first being to maximise the recovery of oil and gas from the UKCS, to ensure a sustainable long-term future for the UK supply chain, and to raise the positive profile and reputation of the industry, highlighting the contribution it makes, which is why I'm really pleased to be here today. And I've been asked to give a bit of an overview of the state of play, so I hope at the end of the next 10 to 15 minutes you'll be able to be aware of some of the significant opportunities, but also the challenges that face this dynamic industry. As already mentioned, today it is clear that the UK offshore oil and gas industry is a major contributor to the UK economy and has been for some time. It is a multi-billion-pound investor, a provider of hundreds of thousands of skilled, well-paid jobs, and an exporter of high-value oilfield goods and services all around the globe. It creates significant revenues and, most crucially, gives the UK a secure supply of primary energy. We rely on oil and gas for 70% of some of our primary energy needs, and oil and gas from the UK supplies 50% of this. However, the UKCS is a region of contrast, and there is much work to be done to sustain the basin in the long term. Companies continue to invest in the UKCS, illustrating that there is clearly still life on the continental shelf. In 2014, a record-breaking £14.4 billion of capital investment was spent, the highest in 3 decades, and £13 billion is forecast in 2014. Overall, there is a significant £39 billion worth of approved investment and a wave of 25 new projects expected in the next 2 years. However, behind this encouraging news, there is a paradox. There is an urgent need to increase exploration drilling and tackle the industry's rising costs, and in order to remain competitive within the global marketplace of oil and gas. So, therefore, the UKCS is a far more challenging place to do business, but action now will sustain the long-term delivery. The basin is going through a period of declining production, increasing costs and challenging returns, but a significant prize still remains. To date, almost 43 billion BOE of oil and gas has recovered from the UKCS, and Oil and Gas UK forecast further potential recovery to be between 15 to 24 billion BOE. Potential remains across the UKCS, but in particular I'd like to highlight has slowed in 2013 from 19 and 15% in 2011 and 12 to 8% in 2013. This was driven by the introduction of new fields, significant incremental investment in existing fields, and improvements in production from larger fields. And again, the future does look bright. We've seen new field restarts, improved performance, and real concentration on production efficiency, which will be key to improving production in the future. The wave of projects I referred to earlier will have a big impact on production, and therefore it's hard not to see production peaking in the future. And our central case indicates production will rise gradually to 1.7 billion BOE per day in 2017. Towards the end of the decade and beyond, it's like investment, it's a lot harder to forecast. However, for this production upturn to be sustained, it is crucial that the many of the 43 new and 109 brownfield opportunities reported to us in company plans are brought into development. 10 of these are 100 million BOE or greater in size, which is a significant opportunity to the supply chain. Beyond the end of the decade, a number of factors will influence production. And industry and government will need to work together to create the right fiscal and regulatory regime to promote this. The UKCS needs to remain attractive to international investment and create an environment which encourages brownfield investment in order to postpone decommissioning. We also need to increase recovery rates, which currently sit at around 46%, and this can be achieved through enhanced oil recovery, again, another significant opportunity. We also need to ensure that technology supports the extraction of the more difficult reserves. And there is a body called Pilot, which is a joint industry and government body. This was established in 2000, and it aims to ensure a maximum recovery of reserves from the UKCS. And relating to enhanced oil recovery and technology, there are two bodies formed. Firstly, the Technology Leadership Board, which is looking at supporting the development of new technology and the supply chain, and also an enhanced oil recovery work group, which is looking at how enhanced oil recovery can be transferred to existing fields because it's already in operation in a handful within the UKCS. Also affecting production is exploration, and the need for increased exploration is highlighted in these figures. This slide shows the P50 forecast for exploration and appraisal activity. We can see a notable step down in activity since 2008, where 91 wells per year were drilled between the period of 2005-2008. This declined to 53 wells per year in 2009, and in 2013, only 13 exploration wells and 29 appraisal wells, equating to approximately 80 million barrels of oil equivalent, were discovered. And this, unfortunately, was below our forecast. The reasons for this decline in production were caused by lack of affordable rig availability, lack of access to finance, both internal and external, and bad weather and well complexity causing delays. As I referred to earlier, the Pilot Task Force, there is another group called the Exploration Task Force under that umbrella, which are looking at how to improve levels of exploration and looking into exploration campaigns and why it isn't happening in the UKCS. Compounding the challenges I've already shared with you today, as critical infrastructure and hubs are decommissioned prematurely. Industry do need to address these rising costs, and while there is no single solution, there are a number of factors which have been explored, particularly by Oil and Gas UK, where savings could be seen. This includes production efficiency, and there is, again, under Pilot, Production Efficiency Task Force looking at how we can get production efficiency back to 80%, looking at logistics and planning, people, so that's more about skills and looking at work rotations, and also the standardisation and simplification of design. However, as I mentioned earlier, and despite these challenges, I want to remind you that investment in the UKCS is higher than it has been ever. This picture shows the total UKCS expenditure since 2003, and that's in money of the day. But in fact, even adjusting for inflation, 2013 spend is comfortably the highest on record. We can see the step up in activity has come since 2010, and spend in all four areas of expenditure is rising. We've got the record level of capital investment I spoke to you about earlier, and that wave of big projects. And we do need to work hard to make more projects be approved and continue the stream of small and brownfield developments in order to avoid a collapse in investment towards the end of the decade. Despite the lack of E&A drilling, spend has remained high, as the wells that were drilled were often expensive and did overrun due to delays. And importantly, maybe some of the people in the room, decommissioning is beginning to happen in the UKCS. And in total, $1 billion was spent in 2013. Oil and Gas UK do perform a separate study of the decommissioning market, which is due to come out, I believe next week at our annual decommissioning conference. So if that's something of interest to you, I would encourage you to read that report. But in 2013, the spend for decommissioning accounted for 3.5% of total expenditure. We believe that decommissioning for current assets is going to cost approximately $37 billion by, I believe that's 2040. So it's a significant sum of money. So in the face of these challenges, what are the regulators, Treasury and industry doing to secure the future of the UKCS? Some of you may be familiar with Sir Ian Wood's reports, but in July 2012, the British government commissioned an independent review of the UKCS, and that was to be led by Sir Ian Wood of Wood Group. This report examined the main factors affecting the industry's current performance and gave recommendations for achieving maximum economic recovery, now termed MER UK, of oil and gas. This has been accepted by full by the British government, which is really good news. And a new, better resourced regulator will be created and has been named the Oil and Gas Authority and will be based in Aberdeen. DEC are currently undertaking the relevant legislative changes and actively recruiting the CEO, which we hope to be announced shortly. A key theme of this report is collaboration, and that is actively ongoing through some of the pilot work which I described to you in this presentation. The report also outlines 6 key strategies, which again underpin some of the challenges the industry is facing. This includes an exploration strategy to ensure the totality of economically recoverable resources are fully explored and exploited. Asset stewardship strategy to exercise sound stewardship of existing new assets, including infrastructure consistent with the principles of MER UK. Regional development strategies. This is to ensure the development of the UK resources on a regional rather than field basis. And an infrastructure strategy to prolong the life of existing infrastructure and facilitate investment in new key infrastructure. There is also a technology strategy, as I mentioned earlier, and a decommissioning strategy to extend field life and avoid premature decommissioning executed in a safe, environmentally sound and cost-effective manner, and that the UK gains a competitive industrial capability. So in support of the Wood Review, some of you might be aware that at the most recent budget, the Treasury announced that they were going to perform a full fiscal review of the oil and gas taxation system. And this came directly from government, which is a clear recognition of the need for change and the support of the MER principles. This is a major opportunity to drive the change required to our industry's current and outdated fiscal regime. We require a regime with a lighter tax burden, with simpler and more predictable system of field allowances, and one which also supports exploration. The consultation has run over the summer for 12 weeks, and Oil and Gas UK did lead some of the engagement with the Treasury on a variety of subjects. We will submit our own response, which I believe closes at the end of this week, and also each individual companies have been invited to propose what changes they would like to see. The outcome of which will be shared in the autumn statement, which comes out in December, and we look forward to their thoughts fairly shortly. And as a background to all of these efforts, and I know this has already been mentioned today, I think we should be reminded of the scale of the industry and the supply chain supporting industry across all of its requirements. Another industrial strategy which was performed was the oil and gas industrial strategy, which was performed in encouraging number and good for oil and gas. So in summary, there is, despite the significant challenges that I've discussed today, significant potential and opportunity does remain in the UKCS, and that will be particularly developed with the right fiscal and regulatory environments. The areas I mentioned, such as ultra-high pressure, high temperature, heavy oil and deep water all represent new opportunities for expertise and technology. Furthermore, the Wood Review and the Fiscal Review show government and Treasury are bought into and support the UKCS and offshore oil and gas. A lot of the figures and information I provided today are available free online through two key reports, the Activity Survey and the Economic Report, which was released just yesterday. I'd encourage you both to read both documents as they give a good overview of the scale of the opportunity in further detail and case studies and examples of efforts ongoing to ensure the longevity of oil and gas in the UKCS. Thank you for listening, and if you do have any questions, please go ahead.
What was that second report you mentioned?
It's the Activity Survey and the Economic Report. There are also the specialist guidelines and studies on a variety of subjects which are generally available free online, so I'd encourage you to have a scout of the website.
Your website?
Yeah, I think that's oilandgasuk.co.uk.
Will you be making this available?
This presentation?
Yeah, we can put all of the presentations online following the event. I'll give you the email address during my presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
So lots of information there, a great overview, and really interesting to sort of set in context kind of the scale of what we're talking about here today, and what some of the opportunities might be to fit into that supply chain there. So that was Abigail Clark, and as Gavin said, if you're looking for that slideshow, then I think we're going to give out an email address where you can find that later on, in case you didn't hear any of that last bit of chat there. Okay, so the next speaker we have for you is Steve Chisholm, who's the Director of Communications and Marketing for the Global Energy Group, and he's going to have a look at entry requirements, industry expectations, or standards, quality, that kind of thing, and kind of considering how to, the sort of right point of engagement in the supply chain for you if you're a new entrant as a supplier. So let's welcome Steve Chisholm up to the stage. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see you this morning. I thought I'd just set the scene of global energy, not a sales pitch, but just nice to put it in the context of what we do, because obviously we have a very large supply chain across our various business units with hundreds of suppliers, and they really are suppliers of all sizes and covering quite a wide range of activities. Pretty much we're in the provision of construction and maintenance solutions, and pretty much it's about reducing risk within the industry for our clients, and everything really underpinned by the people that we have. I think the supply chain is all about creating choice. It's about oil companies and the contractors that work for them getting value for money out of their supply chains, and it's about managing the risk that engaging with that supply chain brings, and also helping the supply chain excel, but at the same time getting from the supply chain services and goods which help them do their businesses better. And no denying from Abigail's presentation just the sheer scale of the market that's out there, and that's going to be there for years to come. I spent yesterday at an internal global session where we were looking at the market for the next 5 years, and the opportunities really are exciting. A lot of capital spend, a lot of operational spend as well, and people really looking for innovative ideas and new opportunities to help drive down cost. In terms of what we do, we've had a pretty rapid rise to growth, starting back in sort of 2005, pretty much from a standing start. We're now turning over about 475 million. What that means in basic terms is that we've overcome a lot of challenges. We've learned a lot along the way, and there's some things that we did them again, we'd do them slightly differently or better, and we've also had a fair degree of success, fortunately, along the way there as well. Very much dominated by the oil and gas work that we do. It by far makes up the majority of our work. And over the last few years, we've expanded in specific regions around the world, particularly in the Asia Pacific, Australia, etc., and a fair bit of work in the United States. About 4,000 plus employees now across our business units, and most of those are the skilled trades and craftsmen, and obviously picked up a few recognitions kind of along the way. Our business kind of splits into four at present. Equipment manufacturing, fabrication work that we do, provision of modules, subsea equipment, etc., which we pretty much excel at. We do a lot of operations support, ensuring the integrity of assets offshore, keeping them maintained, keeping them working safely. Here locally in the Cromarty Firth at both Invergordon and at our dock at Nig, we do a lot of marine asset integrity work, so the repair and upgrade of drilling rigs and ships, etc. And we've a large fleet of cranes. A bit of inward reflection as to what are your skills, what is it you excel at, what's your core business, and then look outside. Great organisations like FPAL, represented here today, who keep a register of really all the supply chain within the sector. You can look to see who's providing the kind of services already if you were to join that you might choose to give yourselves. But I think pretty much the first step is what is it you provide, what services do you do that could equally be used in oil and gas as well as your existing markets. Try and develop some case studies, some literature, some information you can then share with prospective new clients which help them join the dots between what you do now perhaps in another sector with the type of services they're already receiving within oil and gas. If you've got client testimonials that can talk to the value of your service, the quality of it, the reliability, then obviously these things help to build credibility in terms of trying to penetrate a new market. Beachhead strategy, it's very easy to look at just the sheer scale of oil and gas and pretty much be overcome just by the size of the task. So my advice there, I guess, would be niche and be specific. You know, look for contractors who will maybe make best use of your service. Maybe you're not going to sell direct to the oil companies. Maybe it's a contractor that's working on behalf of the oil company that you can add value to. So decide from the service you've got, do you pitch to the oil company directly, or is your target more another service company perhaps in the supply chain somewhere that has need of your service. But make it quite focused. I think if you start in a niche, pursue just a small number of opportunities to begin with, the more you build up track record and relationships and networks, then the more that will expand out. And it'll expand out quite quickly if you've presented a good value proposition. Health and safety and environment, I think no entry into oil and gas is going to be without a lot of questions, and basically these questions help your potential client companies manage the risk in working with you. They're going to look for some demonstrable safety management system at work. You don't necessarily need to be accredited to ISO 18001, but you do need to have a documented system and evidence of it working. And as with most things in life now, statistics are everywhere. So you need to keep track of the man hours you're working, the incidents you've had, because these are benchmarked in an industry standard, usually either against every 100,000 man hours that are worked or against every million man hours worked. There's different sort of indexes used. But basically, when you come to compete for work, the safety record you've got is going to be compared against those people that you're going to be competing against. And obviously oil companies and ourselves as contractors want to do business with safe companies, because as we work with you, you introduce risk potentially to our business. So we want to work with people with the same outlook and safety that we and our clients have. So record statistics are there. Benchmarking and performance, you'll see if you were to get involved in FPAL, how you can then choose categories like safety and quality. You can benchmark yourself against your peers in the industry, and you can see how you're doing. It gives you an indication of how oil companies and contractors will view you. It also gives you a sense of what areas of your business you may need to improve upon if you're to rise up those rankings. So safety and the safety statistics, very key, paramount importance. Quality, there as well, very obviously evidence of a demonstrable quality management system. An expectation that you're likely to be accredited to ISO 9001, although that's not a magic bullet in itself. I can think of dozens of examples of ISO 9001 companies delivering pretty poor quality goods that haven't been right. So what's really of best importance there is you can demonstrate a working system, that you're actually checking and reviewing the quality of the goods, and that you've got an active system that's identifying any shortfalls and there's some program of improvement in place. More comfort comes from knowing you've got a system that you're working that's adding benefit than just having a certificate on the wall. Certificate's important, but it's how you manage quality that's most important of all. On the financials, if you're a new business, you'll perhaps struggle with this because you won't have the records at hand, but typically you're going to be asked for your last 3 years' accounts. That's really to check for stability. Do you have the financial cash flow to manage the size of the contract you're taking on? Obvious questions, are you going to be around in a few months' time when the client's expecting delivery? So looking for sustainability and the ability to finance the work. And they're looking for that cash flow liquidity commensurate with the risk that you're taking on. And if it's an expansion in a new business, have you got the financial capacity to expand your business and to trade in a new sector? So kind of obvious stuff there, but clearly important. Industry qualification, you've got to get yourself out and spotlighted within the industry. So one of the key ways to do that, and it's one we do and most of our competitors as well, is to register with agencies like FPAL and Achilles. They're basically, you're thinking of oil and gas, really couldn't recommend more highly enough listening to Craig from FPAL and considering registering there, because everybody that's really serious about playing in the business is there, and it's really given great store by the oil companies for sure. Contracting, really just to talk a bit about contracting in oil and gas. If you're perhaps not used to it, maybe you're supplying services on basic purchase orders. If it's goods, maybe there's some other simplified or other contract forms if you're providing services. Within oil and gas contracting, the supply chain, Logic is an industry organisation which has spent quite some time in years past developing standard terms and conditions that we can use for a whole range of different services that are provided to the industry. And they've been specifically developed to be very fair, balanced and neutral, so they help manage the risk on the buyer side, but they also provide a very fair platform for the supplier to work against as well. If you get the opportunity to work under a standard contract set, such as Logic, then take it, because it gives that equal protection on both sides. Often we're eager to get into new markets. We're keen to perhaps take the first contract that comes along, or be very eager to sign up for business. It's worth getting the contract terms and conditions right from the outset, even if that means spending some hours in discussion with your client, making sure you understand them, making sure that any terms that might damage your business are properly understood or negotiated out. You don't necessarily have to accept to the very last detail the first set of terms and conditions you're offered. If you have an issue that's of concern to you, if you've got the ability to review the contract in-house, do so. If it's new and it's a sizable contract, advice would be to seek legal advice from a commercial lawyer who's experienced in oilfield contracting, because sometimes very innocuous wording changes or little comments in a contract can mean a very big financial exposure somewhere down the line. So it's worth investing the time up front to make sure you understand what you're getting into, and also that the terms and conditions are suitable for yourself. You may be told things like, sorry, this is our standard contract, we're not willing to change it, or no, don't worry about that, that'll never happen, it's just one of these things, we put it in there but it's never going to happen to you. If I had £1 for every time that somebody had told that to me, I wouldn't have to be standing here this morning, I'd be somewhere much sunnier. So don't necessarily accept what you're told. It's fair and right that you get into a contract that works for you. Clearly there is standardisation, as with the Logic contracts we spoke about, but if you don't understand, ask and take advice if you feel that's appropriate. Very easy to sign up for something thinking you're safe. God forbid something goes wrong X months or years down the line, it could be really damaging for your business. And your client, whether it's a contractor or a company, doesn't want damage in the supply chain either, so they're going to give you time to be fair and reasonable and discuss any concerns you've got with you. Manage your cash flow. If it's new business for you, you're maybe looking at how you finance it going forward. Pay attention to things like milestone payments. You can ask for some money up front on the signing of a contract. You can ask for money when goods are delivered to you to use. You can pretty much, in most contracts, agree a process of milestone payments that let you kind of make the cash flow reasonably neutral. So yes, you'll have some exposure, but you needn't necessarily have to wait till the end of a job being done to receive any revenue from it. So look at how you manage your cash flow. We have some interesting discussions about contract liabilities with some of our subcontractors and even in-house, and we really want to make sure that any contract or purchase order we enter into clearly defines the limits of our exposure and our liabilities. So if we've got insurances for employers of public liability, what are the maximum levels of that? What deductibles, excess, effectively do they give? Because you know if there's any risks beyond that, you either need to write them out of your contract or you need to have them dealt with in some other way. Typically, we would certainly like to see that our maximum exposure under any contract we do doesn't exceed the value of that contract. If it does, then you're taking on a inventory. Is it with an oil company? Is it with a service company such as ourselves or one of our competitors? And then start to set out your stall to make your initial contacts and market that service. Look at the health and safety issues, because you're going to be questioned hard on that. You're going to have to expect to have the systems and the statistics to demonstrate just how safe you are and what your commitment to safety is and how you're performing. Similarly in quality, you're going to have to demonstrate a working system there and what processes you have in place to make sure that any non-conforming product, any mistakes or problems are dealt with and how your business is going to improve going forward. We can then register with the likes of FPAL to be able to showcase your services on a wider platform. It's an easy portal for oil companies and contractors to find you on when they're looking for services like yours. And it's a place for them to go and look you up once you've made telephone contact with them or maybe made contact them initially by email. And then pretty much final advice there was just on the contracting side. It's a new market for you perhaps. It has levels of formality to it. It's got standard terms and conditions, but eager as you may be to get into new business, take the time out to understand it and to get the contract side of it right. And the only final words for me would be good luck. It's a great opportunity, it's a great market, so wish you all the very best in getting into it. Thanks.
Any questions for Steve just before he sits down for just now? We will have a dedicated Q&A at the end, and so you can save it for then if you want. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Steve Chisholm, Director of Communications and Marketing for Global Energy Group. And Steve talking there about, as you say, the formalities. There's an awful lot to think about there, an awful lot of things to that you're going to have to be on top of if you're wanting to enter into the supply chain. And managing risk was something that came up a lot there. And one of the ways that you're looking to minimise the risk is obviously using FPAL, and our next speaker, Craig Thompson, is the Accounts Development Executive from FPAL, and they're a supplier management community supporting the European oil and gas industry who qualify, evaluate and monitor suppliers on behalf of the buyers. So he'll tell us a little bit more about how that works and how you might be able to make use of that yourself. So please welcome Craig Thompson.
Good morning everyone, my name is Craig Thompson, I'm from FPAL. If you bear with me. Right, so I'll start again. Good morning. I'm Craig Thompson from FPAL, the Supply Chain Management System for the oil and gas industry. So I'm here today to talk about, obviously, entering the market. What you see here is the Achilles. I'm going to demonstrate the Achilles community model. So we're helping suppliers and buyers work together, and that's the whole purpose of using a system like FPAL and registering on a database like FPAL. Without using a system like this, from a buyer perspective, it's quite complex. They don't know who all is out there in the market. They might only deal with suppliers they've dealt with in the past. From a supplier perspective, it's hard for you to enter a market, who to target, how to actually get in with the operators and the contractors. There's also that duplication of effort. Every time you're invited to tender or you're considered for tendering for work, you're requested to complete all this information, all these questionnaires. Obviously, using FPAL, you can see the right-hand side. The model demonstrates itself. It's a centralised database. It's used by the industry. It streamlines the whole process. It's about sharing information. It's more cost-effective, and it's been working now for 18 years. So, it is a tried and tested model, and it is well known in the industry. On the right-hand side, you can see the blue dots represent the buyers. So we've got over 100 buyers that use the system, and by buyers, I mean most of your major operators, some smaller operators, contractors, service providers who are managing their suppliers, who are looking for other suppliers that are out there. That's what we mean by buyers, so they all log into one system. From the supplier community, obviously, we are gathering all information from you guys. We're updating that information in the system, and we're maintaining that information. We're assessing it to some extent as well, and demonstrating your capabilities to a wider market. FPAL began in 1996, the era of the $10 barrel when the oil price was really low. They were looking to streamline, drive costs down in the supply chain, and that's where FPAL came from. So that's why it's called FPAL, which was First Point Assessment Limited. It was started by the industry, by a mix of operators and contractors. Achilles acquired the database in 2005, so that's where Achilles come in. So we are now no longer First Point Assessment, but we are FPAL database, and we are within the Achilles company. Although we're owned by Achilles, we're governed locally by a steering committee, by the industry itself. So we are still governed by the industry. So anything in the system is what the industry is looking for. So it is really much, very much an industry-owned database still. So we've got a mix of operators, a mix of different contractors, suppliers. We've got Oil and Gas UK industry body as well that drive and steer the actual service. Who uses the system? Well, anyone that wants to work in oil and gas. So if you want to work in the oil and gas sector, then FPAL is a really good starting point, and that's where you would register to demonstrate your capabilities. It's a marketing opportunity for you as a supplier to, to shout about yourself and say, look, this is what we do, consider us for contract. We have over 100 buyers, as I mentioned. So we've got a mix of different operators, different contractors managing their supply chain. It's not predominantly, it is UK upstream oil and gas, but there is some people who use it in downstream. We've got, for example, Esser, who operate the Stanwell oil refinery in Cheshire. We've got Maygen, who you've probably heard of up in this region, who's operating off of Caithness. They're doing a marine development at the moment. They're an example of other buyers that are using the system out with the upstream sector as well. But if you are wanting to break into oil and gas, you can see that obviously, all your well-known names. I mean, this is only a snapshot. You've got Dyna Petroleum, you've got Talisman, Chevron, Marathon, BP, Shell, all your well-known oil companies. You've got Wood Group, you've got Aker, you've got Odgefell Drilling, Blue Water, smaller contractors as well. So you've got a real mix of potential customers that actually use FPAL. And these are the guys that will ask you to register on the system, because that is the system they use when they're trying to find out who's out there in the supply chain. It's also a good opportunity when you are in FPAL as well as to be proactive as a supplier. You don't necessarily need to wait for the buyers to come to you and invite you to tender. You can go and actually look at what contract opportunities are out there in the market. So you can see there's a screenshot from the database. We've got 26 forward work plans on there. And it's actually a DEC initiative, the Department of Energy and Climate Change, to give the supply chain a window of opportunity, what contracts are coming up over the next 12 to 18 months. And we demonstrate that by publishing these on the website. So these are updated regularly. So if you are in FPAL, go in, have a look at them, see if you can actually offer any products or any services around the contracts that these guys have up there for the next 12 months. So you can keep an eye on that on the website. You do need to be FPAL registered to obviously bid for the work, because they're all FPAL buyers. So when you register in FPAL, you complete an online questionnaire. It's a very straightforward process. It's an online questionnaire asking you all of this that you see on the screen there, all of the pre-qualification information that you're normally asked for when buyers are looking to consider you for work. So we ask you information about your company, about your products, your services, your safety stats. We go into more detail about quality, health and safety, competency, research and development, all these areas that it's important to buyers when they're considering you for, for contract. In a typical registration record, you can see that there is actually 4 areas. So within a record in FPAL, you can, when you register, you complete the online questionnaire, you register with certain product categories, and then you go live in the system so you can actually be searched for by the buyers. It's then up to you to some extent to go and develop your record, so it becomes more of a working profile to try and illustrate more of your capabilities, more of your HSE compliance, more of your quality compliance, all the aspects that Steve was talking about earlier, which is important, that's available in the database to over 100 potential customers. So we're all about helping you sell to buyers in the oil and gas sector. So like I say, it's about completing a single qualification questionnaire, and it reduces the pre-qualification effort. I mean, that's the whole principle of the FPAL database. You can demonstrate your commitment to meeting industry requirements because it is an industry-driven system. It's well recognised, it's embedded in the supply chain code of practice that most of your companies in the oil and gas sector adhere to, and that's why FPAL fits into this whole supply chain system. Measure business performance, that's something else that Steve mentioned earlier. So performance feedback's largely driven in the oil and gas sector, and it's driven by the code of practice as well. But on FPAL, that's where you actually populate your feedback during a contract or after a long-term contract and how that performance was, how the contract went. So it's a good way for you as a supplier to also benchmark yourself against your peers, and there's a tool in FPAL to allow you to do that as well. So it's about being competitive, benchmarking yourself. It's a one-time audit as well in FPAL, so in terms of your quality, your health and safety, your environment, competency and training. We do audits on certain suppliers. Normally they're nominated by a customer, by a buyer to do so. But for you, from your side of it as a supplier, then it reduces the burden of having several people come in to audit you. You know, it's that one-time approach. We're doing the audit, we're making it visible on the system for those that are relevant, and you know, it depends on the element of risk involved. Obviously, not every supplier needs to do that, but if you do impose a high risk, then that audit is available on the system for all your potential customers to view. Going along with the audit, there's the improvement plans as well, where you could put an improvement plan on the system and demonstrate areas that you are willing to improve on. And again, that's a good way to show your potential customers, look, we're doing something about it. Maybe we are lacking in a certain area, but we are actually putting improvements in place, and you can do all that by demonstrating that in FPAL too. So of course it's about winning new business. So use FPAL in your profile information to market yourself. You know, the more information you put into the system, then the more you'll get out of it. It's one of those databases, one of those systems. You know, always say, think of it like your shop window. The more you dress up, the more attractive it becomes, and the more people are going to look at your actual record and be interested. So that's, you know, that's the theory behind it. So use the forward plans as well. So, you know, go out there and source potential contract opportunities. Use the contact information in FPAL, promote your business to the buyers, contact them, say, look, we're in FPAL, we're registered, that's our logo, that's our FPAL registered stamp. So you need to market yourself as well. When you register in FPAL, you register under certain product codes. So it's a coded system, so it's got to obviously function in some sort of a systematic approach. So when a buyer is looking for a certain requirement, they put in a product code or service code to search for who provides that certain product or certain service they're looking for. So when you register, you complete the online questionnaire, but then it's important to choose the correct and the most relevant categories to what it is you provide. But please don't take that scattergun approach that some suppliers do and register under almost anything just because you think you'll get brought up in a search. You know, that's going to be, it's not really going to be effective. So you really need to choose the most relevant ones, and also put keywords, descriptions against the product codes. So just an example here that you see, you know, there's various categories in FPAL. So if you're a manufacturer, if you're a stockist of material, then there's various categories under the 1 and 2 series of codes, for example. So if you manufacture valves, there's a 2.2 section for valves, and then there's all the subcategories for different types of valves. And then you've got all the service codes, you know, for decommissioning, construction, maintenance, exploration, drilling, and so on. But you know, when you choose the relevant code, as I say, it's the same principle as Google. If you're searching for something, you put in specific terms. That's the way the buyers use the system. So you need to think, how would I be found by a potential buyer? So make sure all your descriptions, your keywords are accurate. When you're registered, that's you live in the system. You've chosen the categories, you've done the online questionnaire. And then we'd encourage you to go and embark in what we call the advanced registration, which is your capability profile. And this is your real in-depth pre-qualification. This tells, you know, a lot more about your company, about your capabilities. And the reason being is there are several questions behind all different categories, from product quality through to planning and delivery, supplier management, commissioning, you know, all service quality, all those different areas. But there's several questions behind that. You have to upload, it's an online questionnaire still, but you have to upload evidence of procedures, of in-house documents, of policies, so you know the buyer can get a real understanding of what you're capable of. So that, you know, it's still an online, but it's like a desk assessment, and it really does, you know, give about 85% of what these buyers are looking for when they issue you with questionnaires. So if you've done one of these, you completed that, then a lot of the work's done already, and that's your, you know, first hurdle to try and get in there with a contract. There's Verify as well. And like I say, 9 times out of 10, the buyer will nominate you to go through Verify, so they're the ones that want you to go and undertake an audit in QHSE competency and training. We'll come and audit you. It's a 2-day audit going through all of these QHSE requirements. And it's more about the management systems, about the policies, the procedures in place. So it's nothing technical, it's nothing contract specific, but it's taken away, again, a good amount of that effort. If every buyer was going to come in and audit you, we're doing a lot of that work for them, and that audit report is available to them online. Performance feedback, I mentioned that earlier, that's heavily used by you can extract that from the system. Hopefully you would have a decent feedback, you've got a good graph, then you can extract that from the system, use it as a marketing tool and say, look, that's where we are against our peers, we're doing really well in a certain area, use it as a marketing benchmarking tool. How buyers use FPAL to produce a shortlist. So all the different criteria I've talked about, all the information that you put in your record, they put in a mix of that criteria into the system to try and get a decent tender list out of it. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, there's over 3,000 suppliers in FPAL, so there's a lot of competition. So that's why you need to populate as much information into your record so you have a good chance of being brought out into that invitation to tender list. So that's a mix of your basic information, your performance feedback, your advanced registration, and your verify audit information. FPAL is also classed as a pre-qualification system under EU procurement law. So these companies are quite within their right to only use FPAL as a selection tool when they're looking for suppliers. And that's also aligned with the code of practice in the UK as well. So that's why if you are wanting to work with some of these buyers, they will say, look, you need to be an FPAL. That's the system we use. And you need to meet certain criteria for obviously different contracts. But use it to market yourself. Simple things like putting the Achilles FPAL stamp on your literature and your business cards and your website, your brochures, whatever it is you're using to market yourself, and tell people you're an FPAL. Because these buyers will use it, they're not necessarily going to say we found you an FPAL. That's the system they use in these organisations. There's obviously lots of people across the, the bigger companies. They're not going to say, oh, we found you an FPAL. That's automatically a database they'll go onto. But if you're trying to work with them, tell them you're on FPAL, go and look at a record. That's what we do. That's our profile information. So, shout about it, like I said. There's a registered procurement contact list on the system as well. So again, you can go and you can find the relevant contacts in these buying companies and use it for your own business development. Performance feedback, I've already touched on that, so be proactive, use the feedback to your advantage, again, market yourself. The advanced registration profile, again, that's demonstrating really a good in-depth overview of your capabilities, so try and populate that if you can. Verify, and that's not going to be required for everyone, depends obviously on the risk involved and what you do in your products and services that you offer, but if there is a high risk there, then, and there is a requirement for you to undergo an audit, then by all means, encourage the buyers you are working with to nominate you to go through the audit. I mean, you can nominate yourself, but the buyers are the ones that actually pick up the cost by using the system. So they're the ones that will nominate you to actually go through that. Future work plans, like I say, plan your marketing campaigns around maybe future work plans that are on there. I'm saying 12 to 18 months, there's actually a lot of work plans on there up to the next 3-5 years. So there's, looking really far ahead, some of the companies. So, get in there early, try and find out what opportunities might be out there for you in terms of different products and services. Event section, like today, and there's various other events that we do around the UK as well, and across Europe, not just the UK, but we get involved in various industry events. We do our own events, so keep an eye on our website as well, and we also do a Meet the Buyers event where we'll bring various buyers there so you can actually talk to the correct people about possible contract opportunities as well. This last slide is just demonstrating how FPAL really works. So, as I said, it's driven by the industry, it's driven by the code of practice, by the EU directive. It feeds into the database. So in terms of demonstrating your company capabilities, that's done through the basic registration in the system. Your contract delivery, that's illustrated through performance feedback. Competitor analysis, that's through the FPAL benchmarking tool that's available in the database. Your full pre-qualification, that's done through completing the advanced questionnaire. HSE competencies, that's through our verify audit, and then of course our sales and marketing, so use all of that to try and push and market yourself as well. And then you have the contract opportunities, so that's where you can actually go and seek and have a look at what's out there, and we'll make that visible for you. So I can only thank you for listening. We'll keep the questions and answers to the question and answer session.
This is energy@hients.co.uk. Coming up after the break, we'll be talking to Mark MacKintosh, who's the area business manager from Business Gateway, and he's going to be talking about the support for SMEs to develop their businesses and diversify into the oil and gas sector. And also we've got Gavin Mackay, who's the senior development manager for energy at HIE, and he's going to talk about their activity and the support support for businesses to diversify and grow into the sector as well. So there's lots more really great information coming up after the break. But I'd just like to say thank you very much to the 3 speakers we've heard from so far, from Abigail Clark, Steve Chisholm and Craig Thompson, and we'll see you again at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much. Hello. Hello. Thank you very much for staying. Hope you enjoyed your tea and coffee. Thanks very much for joining us. We are continuing this Highlands and Islands Enterprise Access to Oil and Gas live streamed webinar here in Inverness. We're finding out for some of those of you who are watching or here in the room who are not currently active in the oil and gas sector, how you can go about getting those opportunities for your business, identifying appropriate entry points in the supply where you can pitch your products, your services, or your know-how, and routes in as well to the industry. So we've already heard from Abigail Clark from Economics Oil and Gas UK, Steve Chisholm from Global Energy Group, and Craig Thompson from FPAL. But now we're going to find out a little bit more about some of the support for small and medium-sized enterprises to develop your businesses and diversify into the oil and gas sector. And coming up to talk to us about that is Mark MacKintosh, who is an Area Business Manager for Business Gateway. So let's welcome him up to the stage now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mark MacKintosh. I'm the Senior Area Business Manager for Business Gateway. And I happen to cover the Inverness, Nairn and Strathspey patch, geographical patch for the service. For those of you that don't know much about Business Gateway or have never come across it before, it's essentially an advice and information service. Business Gateway operates throughout the whole of Scotland, and has been up in the Highlands and Islands for just over 5 years now, but has been going for much longer down in the south of Scotland and the Central Belt area. On the ground, it's the local authorities within Scotland that actually run the Business Gateway service. Up in this neck of the woods, Highland and Moray councils have joined forces to deliver the service within the Highland and Moray council areas. And the other local authorities up in the north of Scotland, Western Isles, Shetland, Orkney and Argyll will operate the service in their particular council areas too. But what's Business Gateway? What does it do? As I mentioned earlier on, it's effectively a business advice and information service. It's a free service. It's funded by the Scottish Government, and as well as some advice and support. There's an element of training available for businesses as well. There's also a dedicated market research team within the Business Gateway service role as well, regardless of size, regardless of sector. So we'll speak to anyone and we'll welcome anyone through our doors. Within the Highland and Moray area, Highland Council and Moray Council have contracted to Highland Opportunity Limited to actually deliver Business Gateway on the ground, and there'll be a similar setup in the other local authorities areas within Scotland as well, whether it's delivered internally in-house by that local authority, by that council, or whether they've given it to the likes of an enterprise trust to deliver. But effectively to people coming in to see us, to clients and customers, it makes no difference to them. That's a picture of our Castle Street office in Inverness. And that's the Highland Opportunity offices above in an old school building. Highland Opportunity Limited is Highland Council's wholly owned enterprise trust. Has been on the go for a number of years now, established back in 1986, so 28 years, so lots of experience, business experience within the staff of Highland Opportunity. And you know, within that setup, there's currently around about 17 Business Gateway dedicated staff covering the area. That might have gone up by 1 or 2 by now. So lots of experience in terms of business support available. Up in this neck of the woods, we've got the walk-in shop in Inverness, and we've also got one in the High Street in Elgin. But throughout the Highland and Murray Council areas and the other areas of Scotland, there will be someone local that's available to speak to, from Caithness up in the north to Badenoch down in the south, and Lochaber and Skye over in the west. We've got local business advisors on those patches. In those patches, they know the local economy, they know the businesses within their areas, so they're very, very familiar with, and in terms of the support that's available at that kind of local level. So any business that wants to see someone, they're not going to be speaking to some contact centre in Glasgow or Edinburgh. It's someone very much local to them that can speak to them face to face. So it just means that the service that we're able to offer is very much tailored to suit the business. With Highland Opportunity Limited operating the Business Gateway service up here, it means that we have access to the whole suite of Highland Opportunity products and services. So as well as that Business Gateway general advice and specialist advice that's available, there's a whole range of different products and services that we can offer and help businesses tap into. There's the Opportunity Loan Fund, which is a revolving loan fund to help businesses start up and grow. We've got a advisor that specialises in access to finance, which is a big topic at the moment. How do businesses tap into the financial support that's out there? What's available? How do they apply? We've got someone that works full-time on that and works with businesses to help them achieve what they need to on the financial side of things. We have someone that specialises in public sector procurement, so helping with tendering issues, contracting, that kind of thing. Ness Horizons is a suite of managed business space which businesses can use as a base for their operations. The Enterprise Europe Network is a fantastic resource to help businesses tap into opportunities trading abroad out with the UK and particularly in the European Union. So whether that's looking at legislation, import and export issues, anything to do with pairing up with suppliers and contractors and customers out with the UK, a really good advisory resource that's available there. And Business Gateway up in the Highlands and Murray is the agent, and I'm sure it is in other parts of Scotland as well, the agent for the Prince's Scottish Youth Business Trust, which supports young people working in business. So as part of the Business Gateway service, what is actually available is essentially a face-to-face advice service on all aspects of being in business and helping businesses grow. That can be from planning to finance, legislation, training opportunities, marketing, selling, your online presence, you name it, there's support available to help businesses grow in those particular areas. And as well as the local face-to-face advisors that work for Business Gateway right across the whole of the Highlands and Murray, there are specialist advisors that we use as well. So if a business has a particular in-depth need for support, whether that be marketing, IT, social media, their online presence, looking at developing new products, new services, getting into new markets, there's specialist advice available that we can call upon as well. So consultancy advice that we would allocate time to work with a business to help them do whatever it is they want to do. How does a business access the support? Well, the usual ways, via phone, email, or comes in to see us in person. Quite often someone will be referred from another source, so they might have been dealing with another business support agency. It could be the Chamber of Commerce. It could be the Federation of Small Businesses. It could be any of the industry-specific support organisations that they work with. Will often refer to ourselves in Business Gateway. They can come in, make an initial inquiry, deal with a real person on the ground, a business advisor. We can hook them up with that specialist advice if they need it. But a big chunk of what Business Gateway does is work in partnership with other business support agencies. So we work very much hand in hand with Highlands and Islands Enterprise, a partnership organisation. And this, as I just mentioned, really, if businesses make Business Gateway their first port of call for accessing any business support, any business advice that they're looking for, it's a free service, so you know, it's there to be used, and we'll dedicate as much time as a business needs to look at the areas of support that they need and work with them to help them achieve what they need to achieve. Some of the examples of where we've helped businesses enter a particular supply chain is if a business needs to be at a particular stage, it needs to have perhaps certain processes and procedures in place. It maybe needs to meet a particular quality standard. The support's available to help them look at what the options are and to guide them through the process and to help get these policies and procedures in place. So even basic things like environmental policies, health and safety policies, quality management system or statement, these are all areas which are quite important for entering in and going further into, you know, the various supply chains that are out there. So Business Gateway, first port of call, and we'll signpost to the other support services if that's appropriate. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. That's excuse me, Mark MacKintosh, Senior Area Business Manager for Business Gateway. Just explaining there, obviously, that Steve had talked earlier on about there's an awful lot of requirements for entering into this, and the support is there, so that's good to know. And there's lots more support as well from HIE. They've got a lot of support for businesses to also grow and diversify into this oil and gas sector. So Gavin Mackay, who's the Senior Development Manager for Energy, will come and tell us about some of those now.
Thank you, Julia. Good afternoon, everybody. Just first a little bit about who Highlands and Islands Enterprise are. We're the Scottish Government's Economic Development Agency for the north and west of Scotland. We support companies operating across the 6 key sectors in line with government economic strategy. Energy is one of those sectors. There's a rich history of oil and gas in the Highlands and Islands, and a long track record, and we've heard from one of our businesses that's been very successful in the sector. It's hugely important to the economy in Scotland and will remain so for generations to come. We heard from Abigail that these are really changing times. You know, we've got the Wood Group report. We've got fiscal changes on the horizon, designed to support maximum economic recovery and enhanced oil recovery. And actually, a stat that you use: 42% of UK oil and gas activity is exports. In Scotland, that's even more impressive. In 2013, it tipped 50%. So it really is a global marketplace that we're operating in. But on top of that, or the other side to that coin, is that you've got downwards pressure on UK content in UKCS, and you do have escalating costs and this real drive for cost reduction. So with these challenges for the industry come opportunities for innovation and for new entrants to increase competition in the market and innovate to find new ways of supporting the sector deliver. And primarily, it's going to be supporting the operators and their supply chain reduce costs, and that might be working with about 150 energy businesses. Around about half of those, we would say, are dedicated oil and gas businesses, but the nature of the sector in the region is that they'll quite often have other energy interests. And in the last 12 months, we supported 23 companies, investing almost £10 billion, and against total project costs of about 68 million. And we're anticipating, because you can only do an educated guess as to what the impacts might be through your diligence ahead of these investments, but looking at increased turnover in excess of 216 million and supporting about 1,400 jobs when these investments come to fruition. So that's just in the last 12 months. And over the last 4 years, across the region, there's been almost £140 million invested in energy infrastructure in ports and harbours to support offshore energy. So that's across the board, marine, offshore wind, and oil and gas and all of its subsectors. And previous approvals, which are actually spending now, are anticipated to bring forward about 600 jobs this year and next. So that's the kind of space that we're operating in, and the kind of investment. A few numbers to paint the picture. Now, the support that we provide chiefly comes through account management, and Mark outlined the relationship that we have with Business Gateway as being the first port of call towards moving towards that kind of account managed status. I would point out though that we've got a couple of our account managers with us today, so feel free to grab them during the networking and have a chat about just what's involved in accessing HIE support. And chiefly, I mean, first thing I would say is it's all discretionary, but chiefly a lot of it's about advice, signposting, and information. Yeah, a couple of the products that we're have developed in response to the huge upturn in investment in UKCS is following on from this event, access to oil and gas specialist advice. So we've heard from Steve and from Craig about some of the entry requirements and how you would go about accessing the industry. And we've put together some essentially consultancy advice that's potentially available to support you assess where your business, product, service, know-how could be applied to support the aims of the oil and gas sector. So how can you support supply chain companies do things better, cheaper, faster, more safely, more cost effectively, or higher quality, and then to develop a plan for you to work towards fine-tuning your product offering and presenting that to the industry, chiefly based in Aberdeen. And then for companies, and I see a couple of companies in the room who are currently active in the sector, some further advice, just looking at the value proposition of the business. So if you're currently active in oil and gas, and fine-tuning that, and we've actually got a session this afternoon which incorporates an element of that, which is to hone the pitch that when you have an opportunity to present your company's capabilities to the supply chain at the appropriate tier, that you can very quickly convey your value proposition and where you can add value to that business, so that you can pique interest and hopefully move things on. So we're running a session straight after the lunch and networking this afternoon on pitch, elevator pitch training. So there are a couple of products that I wanted to highlight. I've put high energy up there as well. It's a good source of information in terms of identifying some of the industry reports that Abigail was talking about, and just other useful events and information. And I've also put in there Meet the Buyer and learning journeys. Now this is something that's actually delivered by Energy North, who are the industry trade body for the north of Scotland and the Highlands. With support from HIE, they've been doing a fantastic job of pulling together a key procurement personnel from some of the Aberdeen-based businesses, and giving our companies opportunities to go in and pitch their product and service to these companies. So these Meet the Buyer events and the consultancy advice that's on offer are very complementary in terms of supporting businesses to make the most of the opportunities that have been created through these networking events. And just that really, I was going to sum up and say, we've had some fantastic presentations from Abigail, from Steve, from Craig. These guys outlined the scale of the opportunity. They provided some real insight into what's required, what you need to do as a business. And Mark and myself can hopefully start to follow that up with the kind of advice and information that covers the how bit. So we've got a wee bit of an insight into the what, and we'd like to support you do the how piece through a range of support mechanisms. So we are here for the lunch and networking. Please come and grab us, and likewise grab my colleagues from the area team who are working directly with energy businesses to support their growth ambitions. And I think that's us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gavin. Okay, so we're going to have a little Q&A session just now for anyone who's got any questions. Also, if you're watching online, you can actually rewind the seminar to recap anything that's been said earlier on, and you can also go to High Energy Scotland, to the YouTube channel there at any time, and you can watch the seminar again. That goes for anyone in the room as well. So if you want to pass it on to some colleagues who you think might be interested, then you can do that too.
Perfect.
Sorry.
And we'll circulate it to all of the attendees, both physically and online.
Okay.
Can I just ask, will that be today by any chance? Because I've got a meeting tomorrow when some of the stuff I saw would be really, really useful.
Will that be today, Gavin? We're just one of the audiences.
I'm looking at a colleague. I think we can do it. Can we do it today? Yeah, we're
Yes,
nodding. Yeah,
getting nods.
That would be really helpful.
Okay, excellent. So that'll be available today. Okay, so we're going to have a little Q&A session just now if you've got any questions for any of the panel. And do bear in mind, you'll have an opportunity afterwards to do a bit of networking, and I'm sure they won't mind answering your questions then too. But if you do have a question, if you want to stick your hand up, I'll come over with a microphone just so that we can get it, we can hear it for the online viewers as well. Does anyone have any questions?
Can I maybe? Sorry, I was going to get the ball rolling, but it was actually one for Craig on the FPAL site, and I should know this, but for the guys in the room who are looking at this for the first time, and I'll maybe just point out as well, it's the industry portal by industry for industry. Other portals are available, but but it really is an industry initiative, and that's why we have Craig along today. But in terms of looking at forward plans from some of the key operators and getting a feel for the types of contracts that they're going to be letting in future, is any of that information available for folk to browse in advance of joining up?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's actually on the home page of the website. Although I've said, you need to be FPAL registered, which you do to actually bid for the work. Because it's the Department of Energy and Climate Change that hosts the forward work plans, it is on the main page of the website, so it has to be in the public forum. So if you just go on fpal.com, there's a pilot forward work plan tab that you'll see, and then it's just a list of the operators with the forward work plans.
Okay, great. So I'll just pass you the microphone. There you go, Linda.
Thank you. Hello, my question's for Craig as well. If you've just joined FPAL, so you're a new entrant, how do you then populate the performance feedback profile? Because if you're just a new entrant, maybe you haven't got any performance to feedback on.
Yeah, no, I know that's understandable. If you are obviously starting up and you haven't done any business before, then I appreciate that's quite difficult. But other than that, it's not the key to everything. Is the performance feedback? It's actually getting your profile information up to date about your products and services. But bearing that in mind, you don't actually have to do performance feedback with FPAL buyers. If you have anyone that you've worked with before, you can upload that to get you going. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Any more questions? I was going to ask Gavin or Mark, perhaps, do you give help and advice when it comes to filling out your registering with FPAL? Is that something that you can help with as well?
There's probably general advice that we could give through Business Gateway, yes.
That will help when
Absolutely.
You're doing that.
Yeah. As I say, what we would do is make use of the internal expertise that we've got within the Gateway service, and we do have someone that specialises in procurement and contracting, and yes, so that's something we could provide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was also wondering for timescales, because it seems like there's an awful lot of hoops to jump through if you want to get into to the industry. What are the timescales then for? How long do these things generally take for when you're pitching, and how many months? How long does it take?
In terms of FPAL's concerned, it's normally a month from the time you register to actually everything going live in the database.
Right. Okay.
But we've had people who have encouraged suppliers to register for a specific contract. But providing you've actually registered on the system, the buyers can check that you are in the process of registering. So as long as you've actually completed the initial question. I've seen smaller companies I've joined just recently, actually, in the same vote as yourself, and it's helped them actually put together all of these policies and procedures. So they've seen it as a starting point, to understand that these companies are looking for those. So it's a way of, formatting that. Depending on what you do, not all of these procedures, policies are necessarily required. It really depends what you do. But you're not always targeting, the bigger guys. You're maybe looking to target, someone down the supply chain who's still using FPAL but who's subcontracting these services.
We provide emergency management and crisis management consultancy.
Okay, yeah.
So it's higher up the scale we're looking rather than lower down the scale.
Well, there is a different category for consultancies actually as well. So
right.
Consultancy is different because obviously it's a different type of service. So so not all that is required within a consultancy. So if you register under the consultancy category, then these guys are aware of that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
There's certainly lots of help available through Gateway to physically get these policies and procedures in place, and recognising that you're a small business and putting in place things that are appropriate for your size of business as well. But no, there's loads of templates, tools, guides that we can actually provide you, and we'll sit and help you put those in place rather than just give you a template to fill out and go off. We'll actually sit with you and make sure that it's appropriate and it's fit for purpose. So you're not having to buy in consultancy or buy off-the-shelf things. It's available through Business Gateway for free.
Okay, thank you.
So can I maybe just add on to that as well? We were having a chat about this during the break, and we appreciate there's on the face of it, it looks like the entry requirements are pretty high, but in reality, they should just be commensurate with the size of the business and the size of the contract that you're going for. So it might look a little bit off-putting, but once you drill down into it, some of these things are just fairly standard and straightforward to produce and incorporate into your business.
Just by way of a practical suggestion, given the critical nature of the service you provide, there's obviously a requirement for some levels of formality, but perhaps a soft entry point, and maybe you're already there, is the existing service providers who are already qualified in there, because as they look to expand their business, they're looking for skilled practitioners. So perhaps a way to get exposure is to try and partner or align with one of those, or go and speak to those.
Yeah, we have been subcontracting for other service providers at the moment, which is we've got in through word of mouth and people who knew the consultant. So that's how we've done it so far. But we want to also be able to move in on our own rather than have to do it on the back of somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent starting point, and through doing it you get to make the contracts in the network, but also you get to look at the kind of procedures and process that they're asking you to work under, and that I think would give a very useful framework as to the type of structure you'd need to put in place to be fit for purpose, so it's not too bureaucratic, but it's what's needed to do the job.
My question is not really a question, it's more an opportunity for Abigail to promote the pilot share fair. Certainly speaking to Energy North members, I mean, out of all the oil and gas shows that I go to, the pilot share fair is definitely like streets ahead, and it's definitely a great way to sort of get to speak to the right people. But yeah, I'll let you speak about it.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. So particularly for yourself and maybe a lot of other people in the room, Pilot Share Fair, which is a joint Oil and Gas UK and DEC run event, provides a great opportunity for the operators, so the larger companies, those buyers, to showcase what future plans they have, so those forward plans which are promoted on the DEC website. You also have an opportunity to hold one-to-ones with some of those companies, so it's a bit like speed dating, but you book in a slot and you can pitch your services and skills to those organisations. And additionally, there's a floor showcase of certain companies. I'm unsure whether there's still booths available, but looking forward, that's always an opportunity for you to have a space on that floor. I think it's run annually, but we received some very positive feedback. The footfall was quite impressive, and I think it's generally praised as a fairly successful event, and particularly for new entrants, it really is an opportunity to have that one-to-one with those companies, and just also get your name out there by purely just networking and discussing with the people on the floor. And I know FPAL are there every year as well, and that works quite closely with the supply chain work that we do.
Yeah. More information about that. When is it?
So it's early November. I believe it's November 5th. Yeah, and bookings can be made online through our website. But if anyone has any questions, they can always contact me as well, and I can put you in touch with the right person.
What's the website? Just
I believe www.oilandgasuk. That's andgasuk.
Sure, if you stick that in your search engine,
yeah, but you should easily be able to find it. It's a fairly comprehensive website.
Okay.
But yeah, it's generally a
that
very
sounds
good opportunity.
Always better to do it face to face, isn't it? Okay, another question.
Steve, you mentioned about talking to people that you might want to work with. Can you do that without being a member of FPAL? And also I'd like an idea of what the cost is of being a member.
Okay, well, I'll leave it for Craig to talk about the FPAL costs, etc. But no, you can network and talk to who you want. It's not mandatory that you be an FPAL, but it is such a useful tool, and that will give you a much more focused set of information to work with that will ease your journey into FPAL. FPAL is quite time consuming. It takes a fair bit of time, so the more focused you can be, the more efficient that time is. But it's pretty much an indispensable tool. But Mark, maybe you can chat a bit about the costs and membership.
Yeah, the cost of membership depends on how many categories you register under. So depending on how many products, how many services that you can provide. So for instance, the plus product codes. So generally speaking, obviously smaller suppliers tend to fall in the band 1, which is 670. So. Okay.
You're seeing the opportunities that are there as well through FPAL.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
works both ways.
Yeah, you're targeting over 100 potential customers. So when you look at that, it's a minimal cost to market yourself, if you like. If you take it into a marketing budget, it's not really a huge cost.
Okay.
So I think benefit. so many questions are asked on health and safety, and Craig spoke about Verify. The sheer cost of having to do that dozens and dozens of times as you try and build your business is really prohibitive, particularly if you're a small owner-managed business and time's critical. So a real cost-effective benefit is being able to do that once in a form that the industry recognises, and once it's done, it's there for all these 100+ suppliers to see. They're not going to all come and ask you for it individually. So a bit of investment and time up front, but it pays back many times over.
Okay. Any more questions? Yep, back there.
Question for Steve. If you were, I'm a new entrant looking at a new venture, would you take into consideration, if you could show you, we've got several businesses, some of them multi-million-pound turnover, do you take that into consideration? Well, these guys know what they've done in other things, but we know they're going to be new in our industry.
In terms of giving recognition to the track record you've already got in other sectors, you mean?
To prove that we can run business and we're not just a cowboy outfit that's coming, and you can say, look, 20 years at this and 10 at that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about managing risk, and we're just at a different tier in the supply chain of doing that to the oil companies and the larger contractors that are our clients. So we're looking for stability, we're looking for the track record. You'll have established quality safety systems. There'll be a lot of information there that's directly transferable. And if we're comparing you against competitors who don't have your length of time in your particular sector or area of skill, or can't demonstrate that same experience and capability that you can, then clearly you're going to come out ahead. So it sounds like you've got a lot of useful information and data to draw from that you can use to put your pitch into the oil and gas centre to build your business there further. Yeah, so I would encourage you to use that and exploit it to every bit that you can.
Any more questions in the room? Any more questions? No. I was wondering, just maybe before we wrap up, if either Mark or Gavin maybe had a case study that you could share with us of somebody who's maybe a smaller business who successfully managed to sort of crack this nut, and sort of how long it took, and so the kind of, just to give us a wee idea, maybe if people are thinking this seems like it might be a bit too overwhelming, it might be too difficult, but actually, a real life example. Do you think you could do that?
Yeah. There's no small companies springing to mind, but certainly companies that have been established in other sectors, and that's where they've developed their reputation and core competencies that have successfully diversified into oil and gas. There's a plethora of those kind of businesses up in the Caithness area who've taken some of the quality requirements from nuclear and applied those to oil and gas very successfully. And I know one Swallow is not a summer make, but there's food and drink engineering businesses in Murray who similarly have been providing engineering services for the distilling industry, who have successfully diversified into oil and gas. So just a couple of names on the food and drink side, for Scythes, the one that springs to mind, and just to throw in a name there for a traditional nuclear company is JGC up in Caithness. I don't know, Mark, do you have any thoughts on the kind of on the smaller side? Excuse me.
None that are springing to mind. It's probably areas in other parts of the Highlands that some of my colleagues have dealt with would have helped some of the smaller businesses, but nothing that springs to mind in Inverness at the moment.
Sorry, you're speaking about case studies. We've got several case studies we've done with suppliers, small suppliers, to help you understand how it's managed to break them into industry. So if you go onto our website, just the homepage of FPAL,
YouTube channel, at any time you want to watch the seminar again. I just want to say thank you very much to our panel today, to Abigail Clark, to Steve Chisholm, Craig Thompson, Mark MacKintosh and Gavin Mackay. And let's have a round of applause. Thank you very much for the panel for joining us. And thank you for watching, and hopefully you've got lots of information out of this session and ideas where to go and find more information and get into that lucrative oil and gas sector. And thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.